Few characters in recent memory have been as polarizing as Rey from the new Star Wars trilogy. There are a myriad of videos in existence dealing with this topic, and since now I have a channel, this video will join the fight. The main criticism thrown at Rey is that she's what the world of fiction calls a Mary Sue. Basically, a Mary Sue or Gary Stu are, for all intents and purposes, a living, breathing Deus Ex Machina. In video game speak, she's broken and there's no balance patch in sight, as far as December 20th is concerned. The opposition that arises, like Skywalker, against this stance is that those proposing that she's a Mary Sue are simply misogynist and don't enjoy having women spoil the intergalactic power fantasy that is Star Wars. But fortunately, there's a more balanced and, in my opinion, stronger, but not much stronger response that is the kind of whataboutism approach in comparison to her, Luke, and even Anakin Skywalker. I have three main issues with Rey's skill tree. The first is her Apriori Force ability. The issue with Rey's Force ability isn't that she's strong in the Force. That's fine. The issue isn't even that she's got this unrefined kind of brute force way of forcing. Even Luke states that she has a raw power that scares him. That's all Gucci. The problem with her abilities in the Force is that she has a very specific mastery of things that she was unaware of being possible. The strongest comparison I can draw to this issue with Rey's Force capabilities is Harry Potter. You see in the Sorcerer's Stone that Harry is an uneducated magic wielder. This leads to him being able to perform random acts of magic without being able to explain what had happened. For instance, the best example of this, of course, is in the reptile exhibit. He gets a little emotional, gets a little angry, and poof, the glass to the snake's enclosure disappears and reappears. And I get it, okay? The Force is somewhat abstract in its implementation and how it's understood in universe, but the character is expected to hone and learn the depths of such a skill. Returning to the Harry Potter example, yes, Harry is a wizard. Yes, he can perform magic. Yes, he could perform any spell, but how is he expected to perform a spell if he doesn't know the magic words or understand the depths of this power? This is why he immediately states that he needs to learn that one when Hermione casts Oculus Reparo. The same issue rings true for Rey. Yes, she has Force ability. This is evident by her having survived a duel with a lightsaber, or at least it should be the only explanation for that. More on that later. This is kind of fine because she does routinely battle with her staff, as we see in The Force Awakens, but the buck stops at her ability to perform a Jedi mind trick. Much like our friend Harry Potter, there is no reason for her to assume tricking the mind is possible. To say that she learned from her stare down with Kylo is to grasp some very thin straws. The sheer effortless mastery of the Force is just in bad taste considering the amount of work necessary to harness the Force in prior films. For the love of the Force, just give us a montage. I understand that this is an issue that Ryan forced upon The Last Jedi due to having it correspond directly after the first film. But if they just give us a montage of her honing her skills and failing at some point, then it wouldn't be an issue. Heck, Luke is introduced to trusting the Force instead of his eyes in like a 5-minute scene, and he carries it with him throughout the rest of the movie. Actually, no, let's talk about that. Think about Luke in A New Hope. He learns one specific lesson from Obi-Wan, and that one specific lesson is what he needs in order to fire the necessary shot to destroy the Death Star. That one lesson doesn't allow him to defeat Vader. That one lesson doesn't carry him through the trilogy. There's more for him to learn. There's more that he needs to master, and then it turns out Rey's greater than he is with less. Luke doesn't teach her anything. All he does is spout platitudes about the ambiguity between the Sith and the Jedi and how one isn't greater than the other, but he doesn't give her anything. Why? This is why she just bushwhacks him and pulls a Cloud City, but the plot twist is she actually wins. She has nowhere to excel, nowhere to improve. There's not a conflict here to watch. Moving on to our second issue, Lightsaber Skill. In my opinion, there are a few aspects of Star Wars that are more iconic than the lightsaber. They are the ID badge of the Sith and the Jedi, and more importantly, the clash of the lightsaber is what every fan eagerly awaits when they sit down to watch a Star Wars film. I think I can speak for every fan when I say that the Duel of Fates had everyone on the edge of their seats. As a child, I know I was. I'll tell you right now, I lost my mind when that second blade extended at a Maul's hilt. But I digress. Lightsaber duels have changed over the years. It seems as though each trilogy has their own unique fighting style. The OT had very purposeful lightsaber battles. They weren't as flashy, but they were deliberate and passionate. The prequels, on the other hand, took advantage of the special effects and the talented people in charge of choreography and made some exhilarating battles. This leaves the new trilogy somewhere in the middle. They look great, but they can't be compared to the battle on Mustafar with Anakin and Obi-Wan. But let's bring this back to Rey. In her first lightsaber duel with Kylo, she beats him. Granted, he was injured, but he was still a trained lightsaber and force user, and she was not. The common objections, there may be more, but these are the ones I've heard to this are A, she knew how to fight because she was good with her staff. And B, she opened her eyes mid-fight and had her come to force moment or something. I have issues with both these points. Starting with the staff, is she skilled with it? Of course. She fought off thugs with it in order to protect BB-8. The flaws here should be obvious though. A staff isn't a lightsaber and those thugs aren't Kylo Ren. Even if we were talking about physical weapons, it wouldn't be a sound correlation. If a person who is proficient with a bow staff fought a knight sword to sword, then they would still be at a steep disadvantage even if we left out the sci-fi aspects. But when we add them back in, they're even more nonsensical because fighting with lightsabers is not the same as fighting with a sword. A lightsaber is basically weightless apart from the weight of the hilt. That's why in the prequels, they are swinging and blocking them far faster than we could in our backyards when we played treason as kids. This is what brings together the first part we talked about the Force. You cannot separate the Force from lightsaber battles. It is an integral part of combat. This is because the Jedi or Sith in question isn't simply swinging their laser sword and force shoving each other every once in a while. The reason lightsaber duels are such lightning quick affairs is because the combatants are using the Force to predict and to react to the opponent's attacks. They must be calm and trust in the Force to guide them throughout the fight. And yes, Rey most likely had heightened reflex due to her Force ability, much like Anakin did, allowing him to pod race, but this is barely scratching the surface of the Force. They needed training. This is exemplified beautifully in the novelization of Revenge of the Sith. This is during the opening arc of the movie where Obi-Wan and Anakin are captured by Grievous. Listen to this. He doesn't even need to reach into the Force. He already let the Force reach into him. Why is meaningless. It's an echo of the past or a whisper from the future. All that matters for this infinite now is what and where and who. He is both of the lightsabers the other droid bodyguard marches forward to offer to General Grievous. And he is the general himself. This is why he can simply stand. Why he can simply wait. He has no need to attack or to defend. There will be battle here, but he is perfectly at ease. Perfectly content to let the battle start when it will start and let it end when it will end. Just as he will let himself die or let himself live. The mindset takes training, or at least an explanation, which leads us to objection 2, and I just don't see the justification for Rey being able to fight and win the way she does. You cannot convince me that a girl who thought the Force was a myth can somehow tap into it perfectly in combat her first time wielding a lightsaber. This is why so many people are disappointed with her character. Her power scaling is just ridiculous. She defeats her nemesis on her first try, which means that they're not a threat, but then the only person who is a threat gets mauled, pun intended, and has 10 minutes of screen time in the next movie. Color me subverted. The final issue I have is Rey's piloting ability. This is going to draw more of a comparison between Anakin and Rey. Luke was a capable pilot prior to his experience in A New Hope, and he was wanting to enroll in the Academy, so he gets a pass because his Force lesson was so closely tied to his task of destroying the Death Star, so I'm not really going to fault him. But an understandable objection one may raise is Rey's ability to pilot the Millennium Falcon masterfully to Anakin's ability to pilot a Naboo starfighter and basically win a space battle single-handedly. The only defenses I can raise for Anakin here is that he was a pod racer, something he can only do because he has the Force, the fact that he was a slave mechanic his entire life, and that he was born of the Force through Immaculate Conception. Now, all that being said, we can all agree that his space battle debut is very schlocky, so I can't really defend it, Force or no Force. But I can't defend Rey's piloting abilities either. She not only drifts the Millennium Falcon around like she's in Tokyo, but she also maintains the ship better than Han Solo himself. This is insulting to the character of Han Solo. His and Chewbacca's identities are intertwined with the Falcon. There's a personal and nuanced aspect of them and the ship that's hard to explain. It's almost as though the ship is more complex to handle due to the workarounds and modifications they've made to it, because it is established in universe multiple times that this ship does not appear to be what it is presented to be. This misconception is always disproven by Han and Chewie's sterling piloting and co-piloting skills. And as a quick side note, Rey's ability to shoot for 100 is annoying as well. Why is she a crack shot? She bullseyes First Order troopers on the Forest Planet and then pulls a triple collateral while gunning on the Falcon in The Last Jedi. Can she have any flaws? Why does she have to be able to do everything perfectly? This character choice is at the detriment of those around her, and it's so clearly evident. Why need an ace pilot like Poe Dameron when we have Rey? Why need a skilled soldier like Finn who can shoot when we have Rey? She's literally the Jotaro Kujo of this franchise, and it doesn't do herself or her cast any favors. But back to the matter at Han and Chewie. Their ability to maintain the Millennium Falcon so well while it is seen as a piece of junk lends credit to said ability. It's like that old saying about the weapon's utility being dependent on the wielder, not the weapon. I think this correlation works here as well. Han and Chewie don't pilot the legendary Millennium Falcon. It's the legendary Millennium Falcon because Han and Chewie pilot it. In conclusion, the problem with Rey isn't the character that's introduced. I feel as though her introduction to The Force Awakens was solid and personally well received, until the second half of the movie. The blame must then be placed upon the writers who did a hack job crafting her. She could have been a Leia, an Ahsoka Tano, or a Padme, but instead she's nothing, or as Kylo Ren would say, you're nothing. Actually, I take that back. Rey's worse than nothing, because she's everything, and that's the problem. I expected so much more. There was so much potential for this new trilogy. We had a defective stormtrooper. We had a promising Padawan turn to the dark side under the tutelage of Luke. We had a girl who was force sensitive with no origin, and for once she wasn't a Skywalker or a person who had an established lineage, and this no-name was going to be the new protagonist. A new Jedi for a new generation of fans. There were so many places they could have gone, but instead they just squandered her potential for the sake of making the Force female. You know, the Force? That thing that is fundamentally neutral and lends itself to a diverse range of characters with different backstories, motivations, and convictions. It's just so lazy and insulting. These writers and producers think so little of their audience and of their own characters. They're under the impression they can simply make a character female, make her all powerful, and the fan base will clap like seals. If only Leia could have had something to do in this trilogy, then maybe it could have been redeemed, but I guess Ryan just had to add another character arc to his body count. Anyways, I'm Sloth Dog. Like and subscribe if you've enjoyed, and regardless, thank you for watching.